He named himself after one of the most infamous drug lords in American history, Freeway Ricky Ross, and built his entire persona around the image of a larger-than-life cocaine kingpin. From his name to his lyrics, everything about Rick Ross screamed wealth, power, and dope money. He rapped about controlling drug distribution across multiple states, about counting 100-pound cocaine quotes, and about settling scores with bullets. In his world, he was the boss, the architect of an empire, and he seemed to believe it too. "When I'm making my music and I'm talking about blow, it's because I did it," he once rapped.
So don't never get it twisted. Ricky Rose is a boss. I'm certified worldwide. I could put 1,000 gangsters in any hood.
But the fantasy came crashing down in 2008 when the truth surfaced, not through rumors or diss tracks, but through cold, hard paperwork. The man behind the persona, William Leonard Roberts II, had once worked for the Florida Department of Corrections, not as an inmate, but as a correctional officer. Records showed he'd served proudly for 18 months, from late 1995 to mid-1997. The irony was brutal. The man who claimed to run the drug trade had actually been enforcing the law.
Let me ask you a question. Did you know Rick while he was working in law enforcement?
He was a correction officer.
So we're clear he was a correctional officer.
Yes, he was.
Fans couldn't believe it. The hip-hop community went into an uproar. The boss was now being called Officer Ricky. To make it worse, his file came complete with a certificate of appreciation for perfect attendance, a hilarious, humiliating detail that social media roasted endlessly. Before the CO job, Ross had even studied criminal justice in college on a football scholarship, essentially training for the kind of career he'd later pretend to despise. The gap between the image he sold and the life he lived was enormous. When confronted, Ross didn't own up. Instead, he went into full-blown damage control. At first, he claimed the photos of him in uniform were fake, the work of haters and online hackers who photoshopped his face onto someone else's body.
Trick Daddy recently accused you of working as a prison guard at one point, Rick. Is there any truth to that?
No, that's not true. That's crazy. It's not true, man.
But as official documents and pay stubs started circulating online, he changed his story. Suddenly, he admitted he worked as a CO, but said it was only for a few months and that he got fired for being late. The truth, of course, told a different story. He had worked there for a year and a half and resigned on his own.
So were you a correctional officer at one point?
I was, yeah.
So going all the way back, when was that? How long ago?
Maybe when I was 20.
20 years old.
Yeah, I may have last 4 months.
Right.
Before they said,
Yeah.
I was a little tardy.
Ross's attempts to cover it up only made things worse. He went from total denial to a half-truth that still didn't line up with reality. The same rapper who rapped about realness and the code of the streets was now exposed as someone who'd been on the opposite side of that line. The fallout was ruthless, fans mocked him, rivals used it as ammo, and the name Officer Ricky became a permanent stain on his brand. He came up selling the Bronx street dream, a big man with a bigger reputation, claiming to be a tough guy from the blocks where legends were made. But over time, that image started to crack, mostly because Joe himself couldn't stop poking holes in it. In one brutally honest moment on national television, he admitted, "I've lied in almost 95% of my songs." For a man who had built his career on stories of stick-ups, street fights, and survival, that confession hit like a bomb. Joe tried to explain it away. He said rap was just art, not autobiography. He argued that hip-hop shouldn't be used against artists in court, saying if every lyric were true, you couldn't build a jail high enough for all the things I've said. But for Fat Joe, it only backfired. Instead of sounding like an advocate for creative freedom, he came off like a man admitting his entire image was a lie. To fix the damage, he went into overdrive trying to prove he was real after all. He posted throwback photos of himself looking menacing, claiming that the remaining 5% of his lyrics, the supposedly true ones, were proof that he'd lived a real effing life in the streets. But the more he tried to prove it, the more unbelievable he seemed. His stories bordered on absurd, like his claim that he once robbed his entire high school gym class, around 70 students, by himself, without a gun. According to Joe, he took so much stuff that he couldn't even carry it all, and the kids he robbed actually helped him carry the stolen goods. It was such a ridiculous story that even his fans couldn't take it seriously.
I once robbed my whole gym. The whole gym.
Like
70 kids,
robbed them?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans. I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with them.
But the most damaging part of Joe's reputation had nothing to do with made-up robberies or fake gang tales. It was his betrayal of the people closest to him. After Big Pun's death in 2000, Fat Joe repeatedly claimed he had taken care of Pun's widow Liza, saying he gave her hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was a touching story until the truth came out in court. During a legal battle over royalties, a representative for Liza revealed that Joe had admitted in mediation that he had never given her a single dollar. Worse still, he was accused of stealing Pun's publishing royalties for 14 years, from 2000 to 2014, reportedly fabricating royalty statements to make Liza think she was in debt when she was actually owed money.
According to Liza, after he passed away, Joe was telling her that, oh no, he owed me money. You know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden, a bunch of fake royalty statements started to come biannually. For about 14 years, from about 2000 to 2014, fake royalty statements was coming out.
2000 to 2014?
Yeah.
When she later tried to produce a Big Pun biopic, Joe allegedly refused to cooperate unless she publicly stated that he hadn't stolen from her. For years, Fat Joe's lies were treated like harmless exaggerations. But once money and loyalty entered the picture, his deceptions took on a darker edge. He built his entire brand around being a hardened street figure. He wasn't just a rapper in his songs. He was the goon-affiliated ex-drug dealer whose every word felt soaked in real-life experience. His albums had names that backed up the image, titles like Da Realist and Definition of Real, the kind of names that made it sound like this was a man who lived and breathed the street life. In his verses, he painted vivid pictures of time behind bars, rapping, "Remember the nights, me sitting up in a cold cell, I'm waking you up out your sleep, it's me calling you from jail." To fans, Plies seemed like another product of the harsh streets of Florida, a man who'd seen and done it all. But that image came crashing down in 2008 when Hip Hop DX dropped an investigative report that told a very different story. The outlet obtained Plies' official criminal record from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and what they found didn't match the man his fans thought they knew. Behind the rap persona, Algernon Lanier Washington, Plies' real name, had lived a very different kind of life. Far from being a lifelong street hustler, Plies had actually been a model student. He was a high school valedictorian, someone teachers held up as an example. After graduation, he attended Miami University in Ohio on a football scholarship, playing as a Division I wide receiver. His focus back then wasn't crime or drugs, it was sports and academics. There was no dark criminal past, no extended prison stints, no cold cell nights. According to the records, Plies didn't even have his first adult encounter with the law until April 12, 2006, long after his music career had started gaining traction. And even then, it wasn't anything serious. The charge was a misdemeanor for resisting an officer without violence. His later brushes with the law were equally minor, nothing that lined up with the gritty street tales he was selling on his records. As it turned out, Plies' entire image was more of a strategic creation than a reflection of his life. Sources have said that much of the content in his music was inspired by the lives of his brother and close friends who actually had criminal pasts. Plies simply became the mouthpiece for their reality. When you talk about gangsta rap, it's almost impossible not to bring up Ice Cube. As one of the primary writers for NWA, he helped define the sound, the look, and the attitude of a movement that reshaped hip-hop forever. The scowl, the fiery tone, the fearless political rants, and the cold-blooded storytelling. Cube embodied everything that made NWA so dangerous and powerful. His words painted vivid pictures of life in Compton, filled with police brutality, poverty, and gang violence. To the world, he was the face of the struggle, a man who had lived it, breathed it, and now rapped about it with unapologetic honesty. But behind the tough image and the lethal bars, a different story has always lingered in the background. For years, People who knew Ice Cube before the fame have said that while his pen was real, the persona wasn't. During a messy lawsuit over royalties with his former collaborator and cousin, producer Sir Jinx, Cube's credibility was publicly questioned. Jinx accused him of exaggerating his street past and borrowing heavily from the real-life experiences of others around him. "You stole those stories from Shorty and JD and Big Wave," he said. It was a bold claim, but not one without support. Many who were around Cube in his early years backed up the sentiment that he wasn't from the streets he made sound so raw in his music. Alonzo Williams, who founded the world-class Wreckin' Crew and gave Cube some of his earliest opportunities, remembered him as a talented, polite kid, far removed from the violent world his later lyrics described. According to Alonzo, Cube was smart, articulate, and ambitious, but he wasn't the kind of guy who was ever truly mixed up in the kind of trouble his songs spoke about.
Now, what about the Ice Cube?
Ice Cube was a great kid, just a nice kid.
So Ice Cube wasn't gangbanging at all?
No.
Hearing about all this gangbanging stuff from someone that doesn't gangbang at all?
Fuck me up.
Yeah?
The fuck who?
To those who actually lived that life, Cube's reputation as a hardened gangster didn't hold up under scrutiny. Many simply saw him as an excellent writer and performer who had mastered the art of telling other people's stories. What's interesting is that Ice Cube never really came from the chaos he described. He grew up in a stable, working-class household, went to good schools, and was even studying architectural drafting before music took over. Before NWA, Cube was part of a rap group called CIA, and back then, he wasn't pushing a gangster image at all. In fact, their sound and style were more in line with the party-driven vibe of the Beastie Boys, energetic, brash, but fun. It wasn't until NWA took off that Cube sharpened his image into that of a cold, fearless street reporter. He is celebrated as one of the greatest producers in hip-hop history. He was the genius behind NWA's raw energy, the creator of that slow, heavy, funk-infused sound that would come to define the G-Funk era. And as his fame grew, Dre's image grew with it. He became known as the smooth yet dangerous mastermind, the quiet but commanding G behind some of rap's hardest records. But as time would reveal, that G, that gangster identity, wasn't entirely real. When Dre left Ruthless Records and launched Death Row with Suge Knight, he doubled down on that image of power and menace. He wore the black gear, rapped about the streets, and surrounded himself with real-life gang figures to complete the illusion. But the image started to crack when his former friend and business partner, Eazy-E, decided to pull the curtain back. Their falling out became one of hip-hop's most legendary feuds, and Eazy went straight for the jugular, Dre's credibility. Eazy-E coined the term that would haunt Dre for years, studio gangster.
A studio gangster. Somebody that's not real, they go in the studio and all of a sudden become hard when they used to do dance. He was a dancer, now he trying to live a fantasy of stuff that he rap about.
In the now iconic diss track Real Mutha Effing G's, Eazy tore into Dre's carefully built persona. He called out the producer's pre-NWA past, back when Dre was part of the 1980s electro group world-class Wreckin' Crew. Back then, Dre wasn't the menacing gangsta the world knew. He was a flashy performer in sequined outfits and makeup, spinning records in nightclubs and posing for photos that screamed disco, not Compton. Eazy rapped, "All of a sudden Dr. Dre is the G-Thang, but his old album covers he was a she-thang." Still, Dre's transformation was no accident. He understood that gangsta rap needed authenticity to survive, and he played his part perfectly. By leaning into that persona, he gave the world one of hip-hop's most powerful eras. Dre would eventually rise above the controversy, evolving into one of the most respected figures in music. When Ice Ice Baby hit the airwaves in 1990, the song was everywhere, and Vanilla Ice became an overnight sensation, the first rapper to top the Billboard Hot 100. To the world, he looked like a young, rebellious white kid who came up from the streets, hustled his way to fame, and carved out a spot in a genre dominated by authenticity and attitude. But behind all that, his entire backstory was pure fiction, one of the most shameless fabrications in music history. His label knew image was everything, especially in the world of hip-hop, so they built one for him from scratch. They painted a picture of a kid raised in the rough neighborhoods of Miami, surrounded by gang life, riding dirt bikes, and fighting his way out of poverty. Ice himself played into it, telling stories of being a gang member and a street survivor. It was the perfect marketing strategy, except none of it was true. The reality was far more suburban. Robert Van Winkle actually grew up in Farmers Branch, an upper-middle-class suburb of Dallas, Texas. His childhood wasn't filled with gunfire or gang warfare. Even his supposed motocross championship was exaggerated. His team had some local recognition, but he was never a national champion like his label claimed. Then came the music scandal that turned his name into a punchline. The bass line for Ice Ice Baby was lifted directly from Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure, but when confronted, Ice denied it in one of the most infamous interviews in pop history. He tried to explain that his version was slightly different, a ridiculous defense that fooled no one.
Ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding 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 ding. That's the way theirs goes. Ours goes ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding 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 diggy ding ding. That little bitty change.
Queen and Bowie threatened to sue, and he eventually settled privately, paying a massive sum rumored to be around $4 million. The controversy didn't just expose him, it reshaped the way the music industry handled sampling from that point forward. As if that wasn't enough, the story that truly cemented his place in hip-hop folklore was the one involving Suge Knight. For years, people repeated the tale that Knight had dangled Vanilla Ice over a hotel balcony to force him into signing over his publishing rights. It became one of those urban legends everyone assumed was true. But years later, Vanilla Ice himself admitted that while the balcony meeting happened, the hanging part didn't. He said Suge didn't need to throw him over the edge. The intimidation was more than enough to make him comply. That incident, real or exaggerated, ended up financing the birth of Death Row Records, which would go on to change hip-hop forever.
The story that has been told is that I was hung over a balcony, which has never happened. He didn't hang me over the balcony. He took me to the balcony to talk to me. I got it. You don't have to hang me over. I didn't want to question that or test that water, so to speak.
Vanilla Ice's fall from grace was fast and brutal. Once the truth came out about his fake street life and stolen beat, the hip-hop community completely rejected him. He became a running joke, the poster boy for inauthenticity in rap. But surprisingly, he managed to reinvent himself years later. Instead of chasing music trends, he shifted gears entirely and built a new career in home renovation and real estate. His story is one of the most fascinating transformations in modern rap. Before he was the biggest name in hip-hop, he was Aubrey Graham, the soft-spoken middle-class kid from Toronto who rose to fame playing Wheelchair Jimmy on the teen drama Degrassi, The Next Generation. He grew up in a stable environment, surrounded by opportunity, not hardship. Yet, somewhere along the line, he decided that to survive and truly thrive in the rap world, he had to bury that clean-cut image and replace it with something darker. So he did what few could pull off. He reinvented himself completely. As his music career took off, Drake began to shed his suburban background and adopt the persona of a man with mob ties. A figure who moved like a boss and talked like someone who'd seen the underbelly of the streets. His lyrics became filled with hints of violence, coded talk of drug deals, and the cold detachment of someone hardened by the game. But the problem was that no matter how convincing the music sounded, the paperwork told a different story. Drake, for all his rap world bravado, had never been arrested, never been charged with a crime, and had no record of ever living the life he described. His clean legal history stood in complete contrast to the hardened persona he projected. Even Toronto police once called him out after the death of one of his close friends in a shooting. They accused him of embracing a no-snitching philosophy, more concerned with preserving street credibility than helping solve a murder. He had fully adopted the ethics and mindset of the streets without ever enduring their consequences. Rival rappers didn't miss the opportunity to call him out either. When he tried to throw shade at Rick Ross by referring to him as a white boy, Ross's crew instantly flipped it back on him, mocking Drake as the privileged white boy. In the end, though, Drake did what very few could. He built a kingdom off authenticity he didn't actually have. Through money, skill, and relentless branding, he managed to rewrite the rules. For over 2 decades, Pusha T has been one of rap's most consistent voices when it comes to one thing: cocaine. Nobody raps about the drug trade with his level of precision. Every bar feels like it was written by someone who spent a lifetime in the kitchen, watching powder turn to profit. Alongside his brother Malice, as one half of Clips, Pusha built a reputation as the ultimate coke rap specialist. His verses were filled with lines about cooking until the pot turns lava lamp, about Gemstar razors slicing through product on dinner plates, and about supply chains that stretched like empires. His delivery made it all sound terrifyingly real.
And part of your rise up that ladder was dealing coke for however long until you get that record contract, right?
Right.
But over time, fans and critics began asking the same question. If Pusha T was really living the life he described, why didn't he have the criminal record to show for it? Despite decades of rapping about kilos, raids, and shootouts, Pusha T's name has never appeared on any serious police report. He's never been charged, never been caught, never even been publicly tied to a major bust. It's a clean record that contradicts the gritty image he spent years cultivating. And while he's brushed off those doubts by saying he's simply smart and lucky, others have suggested that maybe the stories aren't his to tell.
Did you ever get arrested?
Never.
Is that luck or smarts, or both?
Man, I think it has a lot to do with smart.
There's a certain irony in all of it. Pusha T often calls out other rappers for pretending to live the life they glorify, accusing them of exploiting street culture for profit. Yet his spotless record makes him just as vulnerable to that criticism. Even his corporate work couldn't escape the theme. When he wrote a jingle for Arby's, he managed to sneak in a line that winked back at his trademark subject matter, bragging that, "Our fish is gonna tip that scale." It was subtle, but it showed how deeply his persona was ingrained. Still, there's no denying Pusha T's genius. Whether he lived every line or not, he created one of the most convincing, immersive criminal personas in rap history. He may have stood beside real drug dealers. His former manager was convicted for running a $10 million cocaine ring, but Pusha himself remains untouched. Back in 2015, the internet met one of its strangest overnight rap sensations, a skinny white teenager from Hamilton, Ohio, who called himself Slim Jesus. With his breakout track Drill Time, he tapped directly into Chicago's violent drill sound, mimicking everything from the flow to the aesthetic. The video looked straight out of a Southside war zone, Slim standing among a group of young men, flashing guns, mean-mugging the camera, and rapping about pulling up on rivals at night, wearing all black, and letting the 40 bang. It was convincing enough to go viral instantly. For a moment, the internet didn't know what to think. Was this kid really living that life, or was he just another suburban teenager pretending to be a savage for clout? The truth came out faster than anyone expected. Just a few weeks after Drill Time took over YouTube, Slim Jesus sat down for an interview and dropped a confession that ended his career as quickly as it started. He admitted that the entire act was fake. It was all an image. He said point blank that none of it was real, that he wasn't catching bodies or running the streets, and that he had never even been arrested. He wasn't ashamed or defensive about it either. He actually said he was just being smart, explaining that he loved the sound and energy of drill music, but had no intention of living the dangerous reality it represented.
I got homies that are in that and I know people who are and people around me. I mean, I'm not out here catching bodies and obviously. I'm smart.
Do you have a criminal record at all?
Nah, I'm straight.
So you've never been arrested?
Nah, I've never been arrested, I'm straight.
That honesty, however, came at a price. The same internet that made him famous turned on him instantly. Real street rappers and fans of Chicago drill saw his admission as blatant disrespect, a suburban outsider profiting off a culture built on real pain, death, and struggle. Reports soon surfaced that Slim had received serious threats, with some saying he was warned not to perform in certain cities. Overnight, the buzz disappeared, and Slim Jesus faded into obscurity. Cardi B. She flipped the entire concept of rap authenticity upside down. While most rappers build careers pretending to be criminals, Cardi's story stood out because she did the opposite. She admitted to real crimes but never faced any consequences for them. From the beginning, she built her brand on raw honesty. She spoke openly about fighting and surviving. She proudly acknowledged her affiliation with the Bloods and never shied away from the darker parts of her past.
Right, so this is the projects. This is the projects that I turned bloody. I swear to God. I swear to God.
But then came the confession that shocked even her biggest supporters. During an emotional live stream, Cardi casually revealed that back in her days, she used to drug and rob men who thought they were about to sleep with her. She explained it as something she felt forced to do to survive. She said she needed the money for rent, food, and to fund her music career. The internet exploded. Fans and critics debated endlessly. Some called her brave for being transparent about her past, while others compared her to male rappers who'd faced criminal charges for similar behavior. But what made the situation surreal was that despite publicly admitting to serious felonies, Cardi faced no legal consequences whatsoever. The men she claimed to have robbed never came forward, and without accusers, there was no case. In an ironic twist, Cardi's confession didn't destroy her, it elevated her. It reinforced her image as someone brutally honest about the life she came from, even if that honesty painted her in an unflattering light. 21 Savage. For years, 21 Savage was seen as the hard-edged voice of Atlanta's streets. Everything about him reflected what fans thought was a pure product of Zone 6, one of Atlanta's toughest neighborhoods. His rise was built on the image of a man who had survived the city's brutal reality and turned that pain into art. But in 2019, that entire narrative was shaken to its core. The revelation didn't come from a rival rapper or an investigative journalist digging for dirt. It came from the US government. Out of nowhere, 21 Savage, whose real name is Shea bin Abraham Joseph, was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The world suddenly learned that the Atlanta street rapper wasn't born in Georgia at all. He was actually born in London, England, and had been living in the United States illegally after his visa expired back in 2006.
Rapper 21 Savage has been taken into custody by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Atlanta. Authorities say the rapper, whose real name is Shea bin Abraham Joseph, is from the UK. Well, federal agents say he entered the U.S. on a visa in 2005 and failed to leave when it expired.
The news sent shockwaves through hip-hop. Fans couldn't believe it. The man who had so confidently represented Atlanta for years was technically British. But when the dust settled, the situation became more nuanced. 21 Savage had moved to Atlanta when he was just 7 years old. He had grown up there, been shaped by its streets, and lost friends to its violence. In every way that mattered, he was Atlanta. The lie, as many called it, wasn't a calculated deception, but a form of self-preservation. 21 later admitted that he kept quiet about his birthplace because he was afraid of being deported. Ludacris. He built his brand on over-the-top, wild, and often sensually charged lyrics that painted him as a loud, confident, and sometimes reckless character. From the outside looking in, Ludacris sounded like someone who lived fast, partied hard, and didn't care what anyone thought. But in reality, the man behind the mic was the complete opposite. A businessman, actor, and one of the cleanest rappers in the game when it came to his personal record. His lyrics might have screamed chaos and lust, but off stage, there was no criminal record, no history of violence, and no real-life scandal to match the persona he created in his songs. That fictional image, however, would come back to bite him in a way no one expected. During a tense child custody battle over his daughter, Ludacris suddenly found his music turned into evidence against him. His opposing attorney decided to use his own words to attack him, reading out some of his most explicit and aggressive lyrics right there in court. Songs like IDGAF and Dirty Dancin' were quoted line by line, with the lawyer painting him as an unfit father, suggesting that his lyrical content reflected his real personality. The attorney singled out lines that talked about getting women drunk and taking photos of them, lyrics that sounded dark and incriminating when stripped of their artistic context. Ludacris had to defend himself, explaining that his songs weren't literal confessions, but creative expressions of a persona. He told the court that his music was simply about having fun, partying, and exaggerating for the sake of art, not because he actually lived that way. What happened to Ludacris highlighted a frustrating truth about how society treats rap music. While novelists, filmmakers, and rock stars are never forced to explain or justify their fictional depictions of crime, rappers are often held to a completely different standard. In the eyes of the legal system, a rapper's bars can be treated as confessions, not art. Despite being a clean-cut family man in real life, Ludacris was put in a position where his artistry could have cost him his child. In the end, he won the custody battle, but the experience left a lasting mark.